Hello and welcome back to Professional Development, the New York City Teacher Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Noah, and today we'll be hearing from Sheila Zukowsky, who is a retired New York City Department of Education teacher, as well as a member of Retiree Advocate, which is the caucus of the UFT to which Norm Scott belongs. Norm you might remember from episodes 31 and 36 of the show. No spoilers, but the episode today is about electioneering, something that is bound by a set of rules that are just not very strictly enforced, and it seems that there are no actual enforcement mechanisms in place to separate the good electioneering, the passable electioneering, from the bad electioneering, that electioneering which is sort of antithetical to a democratic election. The first-hand account that Sheila shares is not the only one of its kind, and it really points to a larger trend within this particular election that indicates a need for clarity, which we'll discuss at the end of the show. Without any further ado, here's Sheila. Sheila, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So you are here to speak in your capacity as a retired teacher and a union activist, of course, but could you tell us a little bit about your teaching background as well? As a relatively early career teacher, I'm always so curious to hear from people who have made it through to the other side of a career in the DOE.
Yeah, I made it through just barely by the skin of my teeth. I started out as a teacher because there was an ad in the New York Times I don't even know if it exists anymore, in the education section saying, we need special education teachers, and we'll give you the 9 credits of education on us. That's all you need, on the job training. So that's how I basically started out in the 1970s, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And, at that time, it was easy peasy, pretty much getting a job. You took a test, you had an oral exam, you went to some kind of like hiring thing at the Central Board of Education, and bingo, you were in. I started as a special education teacher, and then I became an education evaluator. I did evaluations of children for special ed, and then I became an English teacher. And then, I think I was the English teacher first. I was an education evaluator after that. Then they got rid of the job. No longer did they need a teacher to evaluate kids. And I went back into the classroom, and I worked in a couple of schools at that point. I had gotten excess throughout my career also. And finally, at I believe 27 years, I was eligible to retire, and I did. I said, I've had it, basically.
Right. You were finally able to access the DOE after they had accessed you several times.
Exactly.
So you got hired. At the time, it was the Board of Education. So you went through the Central Board of Education.
Yes.
What was the process like for matching you up with a school?
I think it was just, did you pass the test, and where would you like to work? Where would you like to work in Manhattan? I think there were so many openings. You could work obviously I couldn't work wherever I wanted because I lived in Washington Heights, and they gave me a job on the Lower East Side, which was very, very inconvenient. But I don't recall that there was any real process, frankly. It was just like, where would you like to teach? It was all based on, test scores. And I remember the woman who hired me, who it turns out later I found out was a supervisor, and very well respected she became my supervisor, as a matter of fact. She said, darling, if Picasso wanted to work as an art teacher at the Board of Education, he positively couldn't. You have to just take the test. I think there was very little matching, and there was no like principal interviews. There was no, at least as far as the principals were concerned, there was no nepotism or no favoritism. I didn't know anybody, and nobody knew me, and they just said, "You want to work here?" I said, "Okay," and that was it.
Yeah. And it sounds like if they were running ads in the New York Times and offering to pay off the education coursework, and that's essentially the same thing as New York City Teaching Fellows, where you start with a few credits, you make up more credits as you teach in this on-the-job training, but it's a result of the teacher shortage. It sounds like they were hurting and needing some people.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing was that I always gripe about is that there was no like, gee, are you a senior teacher and you're going to make $100,000? Well, geez, we really don't want you. There was none of that at that time, because there was the pay of the teachers did not come out of the principal's budget as it does now. So there wasn't discrimination again. I wasn't senior at the time, but at the time, hiring was not determined by how much you're going to cost.
Right. And so then there's no sort of perverse incentive to make life more difficult for the teachers, or find an off-ramp for the teachers who are starting to make too much money.
Exactly. And that's why I retired also, because I felt, this is just becoming too, and why most of the people I know retired also, just becoming too difficult.
Right. It's a shame that there are these other aspects of the job that have very little to do with interacting with students, which is really the central part of our work, that are also considerations we have to make as teachers.
Right. So they may offer a fairly reasonable salary at the end, but I think they make sure that not too many people get it.
Right. And that's something we've been talking about, my fellow tier 6 teachers and I, about just the likelihood of making it to, of course, now it's supposedly going to be 5 years to get vested, which is great. But the discussion about like making it 10 years to get vested and then 35 years to retire at the age of 63, it's the process of reaching these numbers is just an unfathomable thing. So there's this built-in deterrent to actually reaching that promised land of a huge salary. Right.
And they just don't want people to reach it. I mean, like you say, there are all these incentives to just make you go away, basically. And it's a shame, because it really discourages longevity in the teaching profession. And that's what I experienced while I was a teacher. You were considered like rather than consider you like a seasoned and experienced and professional, knowing what you were doing, rather than somebody just off the street. You were considered an old wood dinosaur, waste of time, and get out all the dead wood, and that'll be good for children and good for the profession, rather than I don't know, that's the only profession where like the more experience you have, the worse you are.
Right.
They said that about doctors, for instance. People would go, what are you talking about?
Right. Like what we surely need with the medical profession is to bring in new people trying new techniques, and just we'll see how it goes.
Forget about training. just right. Anybody can do it.
What we need is new blood, and I'm sure there will be lots of blood. Oh man.
The streets will be streaked with it.
Right. We'll figure this out. That's funny. I hadn't thought of it that way. Our topic of discussion today is the story of this rather peculiar turn of events at a school in the Upper West Side. And I'm wondering if you could set the stage for us. Like, how did you find yourself at this school on that particular afternoon doing what you were doing?
Well, our mutual friend Norm was somehow in charge of the organization that I belong to, Retiree Advocate. We were assigned some schools to distribute flyers to, because really retirees and I guess other volunteers are the only ones who could really go in the schools during the day, because during the day, teachers are not allowed, except for, I suppose, lunch hours and stuff, are not allowed to do this type of flyering. So Norm assigned me several schools to go to on the Upper West Side, and that was the third of four schools I did that afternoon. So that's how I found myself inside there.
And the work that you were doing as part of Retiree Advocate, which belongs to the UFC coalition, involved passing out flyers. Is that right?
Correct. For the UFC slate for the election.
A perfectly legitimate and reasonable thing to be doing, I would imagine.
Yes. In fact, I had all sorts of documents on me saying that I was permitted to do this, and I was permitted to go in the schools, and I was permitted to actually put the flyers in the mailboxes. That's one of the Chancellor's regulations that says so outrightly in so many words. And actually, in a couple of schools that I'd been to earlier in the day, the secretary insisted that I leave the flyers with her. And I was a bit reticent to, and hadn't actually looked at the Chancellor's regulation before I did that. And so I did leave them. But my experience at this school was a whole different experience entirely to that.
I have copies of the documents that Sheila mentioned in this portion of the interview, so I thought I'd go back in post to read through some of these so that we have an idea of the outline of what is permissible when it comes to distributing election materials. So the first is a January 18th, 2001 dated memorandum from the Board of Education of the City of New York. That was back when it was the Board of Education as opposed to the Department of Education. And the subject is Campaign for Union Offices. And it reads, the Board of Education is neutral with respect to elections for union offices and continues its policy of permitting rival factions within unions to disseminate non-inflammatory election material in employee mailboxes. So it does specify the mailboxes. Requests have been made in the past for an opportunity to speak to employees in support of candidates for union office. It has been policy to refuse such requests. Requests for personal business days, unpaid non-attendance, or other leave to engage in electioneering should be denied. Principals and administrators whose schools or offices are visited by individuals claiming to be employees during their working hours should obtain the names of these individuals and forward them to my office for investigation. Their requests for admission to the schools or offices should be denied. However, retired employees and employees represented by the affected union during non-working time should be admitted to schools or offices to disseminate non-inflammatory election material in employee mailboxes, provided that it does not cause a disruption to normal operations. Should you have any questions, please contact the Office of Labor Relations and Collective Bargaining. And this is signed by Dale C. Kutzbach. This next document comes from the Principal's Digest of December 7th, 2021, and it reads, Operations General, Policy for Union Visitor Posting of Election Flyers. In accordance with Chancellor's Regulations D-130, retired employees/union members should be allowed to put union election flyers in staff mailboxes during the school day, provided that the retiree is not disrupting teachers, staff, or school activities and shows sufficient identification to the school administration. All union members, including retirees, must comply with vaccination requirements for visitors to school buildings and the DOE's health and safety protocols. Current staff may be given access to staff/teacher mailboxes during non-working time to distribute union materials. For questions, contact your senior field counsel or email Karen Solomondo. So anyway, this is just an editorial remark on my part, but I'd say the documents are pretty clear. So what happened when you arrived at that school?
So when I arrived, like in the other schools, I had to, I had to meet the security guard first to explain why I was there and what I wanted to do. And I was a bit freaked out about all the unity slate posters I had seen already on the wall. The first thing I saw when I walked into the building in the vestibule was that there was a unity slate flyer on every single door leading into the school, plus on the security guard's partition that, for COVID reasons, I suppose, separated her from visitors, plus on one of the pillars in the lobby, again, where the security guard was sitting. So I was kind of blown away when I saw that, thinking, this is very not comme il faut.
So wait, you were on your way into the building. You saw a unity poster on each of the doors. So I'm imagining the standard school design that, the ones that they built in the 20s and 30s, probably 3 doors, and then also on a pillar in the lobby and the partition at the security agent's desk. So that's 5 unity posters I'm counting so far. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's before you even walk into the school proper.
That's what I was greeted with. And I thought, gee, that's not the way, I don't think that's right.
Right. Schools are for kids, right? That's whenever I think about what needs to be in a school, I'm always thinking about how is this thing serving the children. And if it's not serving the children, then probably it doesn't need to be there. I mean, there are plenty of places where teachers can sort of personalize their environment. We have a sort of staff room at my school, and there's a UFT bulletin board in that staff room. It hasn't been updated in a while. There's a bunch of advertising for like March 2020 events, like a labor Seder that was going to happen, and a walk, and these sort of things. But at any rate, that bulletin board is there, and it's not a student facing place. So that's a great place to personalize the environment. My classroom is a little bit personalized in that I have like a pennant from where I went to undergrad, and then another one from where I went to grad school, and that that's there sort of for personalization, sort of so that kids engage me in conversations about post high school academic life and that sort of thing. But at any rate, there are these like a few appropriate places for stuff that is like for the teacher. But when I think about the main entrance to a school building, that to me there should be nothing teacher facing there. That is for students and it's for families. That's like the first thing that they see of a school when they walk in.
I was wondering, on a UFT level, this is not correct, but also why is the school administration allowing this in the first place? It was a public area which both schools shared. So there were 2 principals in my mind that were kind of complicit in this. Why hadn't they said anything about this? And that really bothered me.
Hey, I'm back with some more documentation for you. Now, Sheila and I didn't have this at the time of the interview, but she went and found it and sent it to me after the fact so that I could let you know that it turns out principals are, in fact, affirmatively charged with making sure that union electioneering materials are not displayed anywhere except either on union bulletin boards or distributed only to teacher mailboxes. Those are the 2 locations where union materials can be found. And this is in the Chancellor's Regs, specifically D130. In section 1B7, it states, the principal is responsible for ensuring that unauthorized material is not posted, distributed, or displayed. So, if you want to figure out whose fault it is, the principals in that building were directly in violation of the Chancellor's Regs in failing to remove the posted flyers from public and student-facing areas. That's it. Right. In addition to being against the Chancellor's Regs, it's just like kind of tacky.
What happened next was tacky as well.
Okay, so what did happen next?
Well, this security guard, calls one school. I explain why I'm there, and calls one school, and I can't really hear what she's saying. She's talking to somebody, and she says someone will be down in a minute. So I wait there, and a young woman comes down, and she's questioning me and telling me I'm not supposed to be there. It's during working hours, and I'm not supposed to be doing this during working hours. I said, but I'm not working. I'm a volunteer. I'm a retired teacher, and I have the right to be here, as evidenced by these documents that I have. And I went around, like this with her for a few minutes, for her repeating what she said and me repeating what I said, and then saying, well, listen, I have the documents. Would you like to see them? And, I expected that she didn't know, but she said, no, it's okay, because obviously she knew it was in the documents that I was going to show her. So at that point, I knew she was completely, I don't know if I can say the word, but bullshitting me, basically. So, I was very angry and annoyed that she knew what my rights were, but decided to just put me off and see if I was stupid, and see, if she could cow me, and see if she could just make me go away, which I didn't. But I didn't know who the hell she was. I thought she was, some part of the administration of the school. And I found out on the way up that she was the chapter leader of the school. And in fact, the way I found out, I said to her, don't you think it's strange that all of these, unity posters for the UFT election are on the walls here? Isn't that inappropriate? And she said, well, if you were paying attention, which I took to be kind of a dig at me, you would have noticed that my picture is on on the posters, because I'm the chapter leader. And then I thought, wow, this is really weird. What gives her the authority to grant me or not grant me, entrance to the school? She said that I could finally go upstairs, but she would have to watch me hand out the flyers. And while she was downstairs also, she tried to give me the bum's rush by saying, they pulled me out of class to do this. I still didn't really, I thought it sounded strange that the administrator was in a class, but okay, it's possible. Right. And then by the time I followed her upstairs and got to the office, she said, oh, I have to be in an assembly right now. I had put three flyers in the box by then, out of there were probably about 20 boxes. She said, oh, I can't watch you. Give the flyers to the secretary and she'll do it. And I said, well, can't she watch me do it? She's just sitting there. She said, no, she has to do it. And just give them to her. So I said, okay. And I put them on the secretary's desk, and I tried to, be kind of a little bit jovial and joking. And I said, hey, you'll put them in the boxes, right? Scout's honor. And this poor secretary just shrugged her shoulders, like saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I can't guarantee anything. And basically I got thrown out.
Wow.
That was the end.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever heard of a school being a company town, but owned by one caucus within the UFT, as opposed to, a principal who's got a little too much power, and an admin team with a little too much power. This is the first time I'm hearing of a chapter leader running the show.
Yeah, strange, right? I don't know, I don't know, if what the administrators' stake in this was. Maybe they were all, they were probably old UFT members. Maybe they had some, connection to the Unity Caucus, Michael Mulgrew. Maybe, they they were getting some, some extra credit from him or something. I really don't know what was going on.
The most ironic thing about the story, I think, is that you were there to put information in the one place where it's supposed to be, which is in teachers' mailboxes. But you weren't allowed to do that, whereas the school was covered in, student-facing areas, covered with Unity materials. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, sure was. You're absolutely right. I would just like it, well, just as a general rule, I would like it if, like, the principals and the secretaries, around these kinds of elections got a very prominent notice saying, don't exclude people flyering from your building, that the security guard should get it also, to cut through all this bullshit about getting into the school. Because in almost every school I went to, the security guard went, what, who, when, I don't know. The first school I went to, they said, oh, nobody's allowed in the office since COVID. You can't, parents can't, nobody can, nobody. So I ended up having to call the office and say, I'm downstairs and I'd like the flyer. And then they called the security guard and said, let this lady up. But it would really be, I think, it would really behoove them to make sure that the schools all get this message around this time of year, every election period.
Right, just to streamline things, if nothing else.
Yeah, because nobody seems to know. Well, at least the first gatekeeper seems to know nothing about it, and then the other people, I guess they could plead ignorance, but if we know that, like, it went into I think there's something called the Principals Weekly or something like that.
Yeah.
And it said, please distribute this to all of your administrative staff, including security guards. It would just make the whole process a lot easier.
Yeah, that would be so easy to do as well. I wonder if part of it might just be that this is sort of a novel moment in the history of the UFT, in that there hasn't been such a large coalition before, and so I suspect maybe the efforts of the opposition haven't ever looked like this. So, Unity people are in house. And there's never been any need for to have people from the opposition coming into schools in order to make sure that, in the case of a school that doesn't have an in-house opposition representative among the staff, then you have to have someone able to come in and provide the information that everybody deserves to have. But I suspect that that's something that will have to change, as a result of this election cycle. There's going to need to be some sort of means of getting information out there.
Right. Yeah, very good point.
But still, there are some things that you can correct mid-cycle, and this is one of them. And sometimes that correction just involves not trying to make up rules to prevent the opposition from getting information out there.
Right.
The easiest thing would have been to say, like, oh, that seems legit. Come on up, distribute the flyers.
Right. Well, in
So,
her case, and not put the chapter leader in charge of who gets into the building and who doesn't.
right. That's the really weird part that I still can't get over.
I'm seriously thinking of calling the principal. I mean, nothing. What can he do to me? I don't work for them anymore. What can he do? And say, do you know that this happened? And hear what he or she has to say about that. I would really, I'm really thinking of doing that because um, I think that that person, the principal, or whoever makes those decisions in the school, the administration, really, has given the authority to the wrong person, a person who has no authority to make those decisions.
Right. And it just reflects so poorly on the management of the school,
Mhm.
which might be a very well managed school. Who knows? It could be just it could be just an A plus kind of institution. But when this kind of thing can happen, it just looks like someone didn't read the rule book.
Oh, this is a very prestigious school that's very selective and very hard to get into. And actually, I worked in that building when I was an educational evaluator, years ago. And uh, actually, one of the things I forgot to mention that I said to her, actually, I think I've worked in almost all of these buildings that I went to on Thursday. I said to her, "Oh, I used to work in this building. The computer school used to be in the basement." And she said, "Oh, yes, I know. We have teachers here who used to do that. They're that old." So
Oof.
I thought, yeah, thanks, lady. Thanks for pointing out how old I am.
Man, what a thing to say when you've just met somebody. Well, I applaud your self-control in that situation,
Thank you.
especially as someone who, there wouldn't be much in the way of consequences if you just sort of let loose. Um, no longer working within the DOE. There was one question that just occurred to me. What prompted you to get involved with retiree advocate and volunteer to help Norm out and to help the group out?
Right. Well, actually, it seems that I had been signing petitions for them for years, but I didn't realize it. When I found out there was a group called Retiree Advocate, I said, "Oh, I didn't even know there was such a group." I was signing petitions that I thought were, just opposition petitions for UFT elections, but not really knowing what the name of the group was. It doesn't speak very well for me. Uh, um, and I'm sure a lot of people will say this, when the Medicare, bungle came up, I went, what? And that was the point where I found out they had a listserv, and I got on their listserv, and then I realized I knew some of the people who were in this group. Well, I had obviously known them because they called me to sign their petitions, but it was the Medicare issue that brought the whole thing to the fore, and made me say, "Oh, good, there's a group of retired troublemakers. Let me see if I could join them. I'd like to do that."
Awesome. Well, it's great that you're involved and able to sort of, during the school day, be doing some stuff that turns up this kind of tomfoolery in schools where it shouldn't be happening.
Well, that's what Michael Mulgrew always says. Every time I've been to a meeting and with Tom Murphy, he always says, "Michael says that you're our daytime union, because you do all the things that we can't do during the working day." So yeah, so we got the idea from them, I guess. You're
Right.
the opposition's daytime army, whatever they call it.
Right. I mean, because really, Michael Mulgrew is also part of that daytime group. He hasn't been working in schools in a very long time, so sometimes you gotta have some other folks who can expose what that daytime army is doing during the daytime that they shouldn't be doing. Sheila, thanks so much for being here and taking the time and sharing this story with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.